So VOCES8 turned out to be a great thing, and I like the production values. And I've seen 3 of the ones before this, liked them all, particularly the Academy of Ancient Music. But a 10-concert series in the summer we felt was a little bit much to ask everybody to do. So we've, after much soul searching, I decided that we would focus on the last 5 because it would include VOCES8. It would introduce us to new ensembles like Apollo 5 in VOCES8, neither of which has been to Spivey Hall. But then we get to 16, which is fantastic. And they come, led by Harry Christophers. They came once in the early days of Spivey Hall. I've been trying ever since to get them back. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But huge enthusiasm for them. Stile Antico. The boat, yes. I mean, we had them at Spivey Hall. They were sponsored by people on this call. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Martha. And I've been working to get them back. So they're coming to us in this series. And we at Spivey were supposed to have Chanticleer perform the program that they're going to give us on October 3 in this series. It's called Love, Always. And it's a somewhat truncated version of that program, but it still has so much of the music that I was interested in having us experience at Spivey Hall. And there's a new piece by Stephen Sametz, S-A-M-E-T-Z. And Stephen Sametz wrote one of my all-time favorite pieces for Chanticleer. It's called In Time Of, set to poetry of E.E. Cummings. It's on their Colors of Love CD. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go straight to this CD and get that if you want to experience the joys of Chanticleer. In Time Of, Stephen Sametz. It's been recorded by other ensembles. It was originally written for a very, very large chorus, and Chanticleer took it down to its forces and then added dimensions of very high production from, I think, the Lucasfilm studio in California. Anyway, it's just staggeringly good. I listen to it many times a year. So here we are. We have just heard VOCES8, and this program with Choral Dances is an interesting title. Obviously, it starts off with Choral Dances from Gloriana of the Benjamin Britten ilk, and there was plenty of music that was new to me and some that was not. And I was very curious by how much they actually found to compile into this program called Choral Dances. And for those of you who signed on to their live stream earlier, they were debating what should they have called this program. Because there were some people saying, some of the members were saying, maybe it should just be dances, instead of choral dances. And they had a little, internal discussion about that. But that's sort of
Oh, Sam, it appears that we've lost your audio.
and some of them very, subtly dance-like. So what have people asked us questions already, Amanda? By the way, this is Amanda Polotsky. You know Amanda from the box office. She is our marketing coordinator, and she is, for this evening, for her very first time, hosting one of our Zoom sessions. So we're so pleased to have her. Thank you and welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
And of course, Tammy is here. She is the master controller of all things, and she's making this technically work for us. And we are the threesome team, and thank you for doing this on a Labor Day weekend. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat feature, or you can also just unmute your microphone at an appropriate time and ask the question then. Little wave lets us know you have a question too. So we're keeping a little casual, but we definitely want to hear your questions. And
or even just your feedback to what you heard.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
The most, or what was that, and why did we hear this, and how did whatever.
So we did already have a couple of questions come through to get us started. What are some of the considerations in creating a thematic program like this that spans so many years and styles?
Wow. In musical programming and in festival programming, there's this phrase I have. It's, live by the theme, die by the theme. If you're going to choose a theme for a festival or a series of events, then you've got to really scrape hard to find pieces that will make sense within the context of the theme. This is a really interesting program, and programs these days with choral ensembles are veering in this direction. Chanticleer has been doing this forever. King singers have been doing it for a very long time, and it's an amalgamation of pieces that are from over several centuries in several languages in multiple styles, and they're held together with some internal logical link about how to make a oneness of this experience. So in any programming, variety and balance are key. You've got to figure out how will we keep things, you know, the same so that the theme is delivered, but how will we also create contrast during it? There's a very well-known pianist who a couple of years ago issued a CD called Rain, and it was all about rain. And I thought, So I got the CD and I listened, and it was, quite frankly, forgive me, monotonous, because rain is rain is rain is rain. No matter how, you know, different composers try to do it, you're going to experience so much of, you know, there's only so much rain you want to sit and listen to at a time, at least for me. But that's one of the elements you've got to bear. But then the contrasts, you know, which pieces follow what to create this sense of interest and contrast, but also when is the energy of the program going to peak, and when does the tension rise, and then also when does it sort of relax. And if you're programming for an hour, it's a very different matter than programming for a full-length program. I've been having these discussions with the artists that we're going to be streaming from Spivey Hall later in the fall. We're still working on it. We're getting perilously close to announcing things, so stay with us. But I've been telling artists, when we're creating an hour-long experience that is without a break, that's a very different thing than creating a performance that ranges between 90 minutes and 2 hours that has an intermission. So these artists have obviously given a lot of importance to dance, and we got dance. But notice how they slipped in some incredibly beautiful things like Underneath the Stars by Kate Rusby from Yorkshire and Caledonia by Doogie McLean. That had nothing to do with dances, and I'm not sure you could particularly call it choral, but still it worked because they were so beautiful. So that's when you get a pass. If you put something into a program that's just sumptuously beautiful, it fits, it works. And then the rest of it, the things that have what I would call the sharper edges, you have to fit into the puzzle pieces a little more carefully. I thought VOCES8 did a really good job with that. I was really glad that they gave us the encore. It don't mean a thing, because that swing is upbeat, and that's a really nice way to end a program. Not every artist wants to end a program with something big and loud that moves fast. So sometimes that's a consideration in a program. What do you want the audience to leave with? What do you want the last impression to be? And therefore, sometimes encores need to be considered as carefully as the formal program itself. So those are some of the things I think they have to consider. The singers, too, they were talking about this. How do they get through a program without over-fatiguing themselves? How do they let their voices find a certain place to be, and they hold the voices in that position for a while? And then one of the singers on the sopranos would say, and then we need a chance to sort of relax and breathe differently, and then our voices can adjust to another set of pieces. And I've known many a vocal ensemble, including Chanticleer, never King singers, to come after the first time they give a program. We get this email from their messenger, oh, the program's been rearranged. So they realize when they're singing at full voice, it creates some challenges for the performance, and they figure out, all right, this sequence would work better for us, and it's probably just as good for the audience. So that's what they do. Long answer. I'll try to answer the next question in one sentence and see what happens.
Okay, the next question we had come through is, do dance rhythms influence how we listen to music?
Oh, yes.
One sentence.
Yes. How do they do it? They do it by creating expectations. When you're going to a dance, and the first question, and you're really dancing, it's a question, do you know the steps? Do you know what your body should be doing? Dance rhythms create physical responses in human beings. Every society in the world sings. Every society in the world dances. Music and dance are inextricably tied to our lives as human beings. And most logical dances have predictable rhythms to them. The Rite of Spring does not have a predictable rhythm to it. But, the saraband, the allemande, the passacaglia, these, the waltz, the foxtrot, the cha-cha, the samba, the rumba, they all have very regular rhythms. And therefore, you have a sense of there's a pulse that will carry us through this piece. And the fun stuff in the music making comes when the rhythm is either there's a contrast in the rhythm, or there's a challenge to the rhythm, or there's a nuance to the rhythm that makes things slightly different, and it upsets your sense of expectation. And that's what makes the whole piece interesting. So Latin music particularly has tons of opportunities to upset your expectations about the rhythm. Dances in the court of Louis XIV, less so. Those were incredibly regimented and incredibly proper and just so. And of course, swing music gives Americans, tons of liberties to do great stuff with rhythm. So it's that's the answer. It's knowing how to excite the physical response to the music through the patterns of rhythm, but also how to sort of have fun with them at the same time. And we listen to these things. That's in our ear. Our ear tells us we're expecting this. Oh, that's something to tap. Oh, now we're back. That sort of thing. And there's somebody in the chat who's got something going on here.
Yes, so it looks like we've been asked, what is the history of VOCES8? Is this a new group, and do they sing only classical music?
VOCES8 has been around for a while. I don't know how long that actually is, but the lead soprano, Andrea Haynes, she seems to have been one of the founding members, or one of the earlier members, and they have some CDs out, and they've been singing before they created this wonderful series through their foundation. They also have, I think, in a fairly recent period, acquired this old church quite near St. Paul's, which is actually, I believe, an old Wren church, and they've sort of transformed it into a performance center for themselves, and that's where they sang from today. That was their home. So they're, from what I can tell right now, they're all British except for their one American tenor, Blake, and they do not sing, well, they're embracing a tremendous range of repertoire. Most of them are trained in the sort of what we call the English cathedral tradition. And there's a baritone, who is it? Christopher Moore. He is straight out of the Anglican choir tradition, and so is Jonathan Pacey. I imagine that Barnaby Smith, the countertenor, probably comes from that too. The others, hard to tell, but they all are interested in new music. They're interested in contemporary music. They're commissioning new things from Ms. Benufnik, but also from other people. And they are all trained as classical singers. So they bring technique to their work, and technique is the freedom that lets you do what you want to do artistically. So I don't know that they've toured the US that much, though. That's something I've never been, no one has tried to, quote, sell me VOCES8 recently. They do now have representation in the United States, which happens to be the same manager as Chanticleer. So we have possibilities of hearing them at Spivey Hall now.
That's a very exciting prospect.
Mm.
So we've had another question come through. Have you heard any of the previous concerts in this series? If so,
yeah.
Are there any highlights? And is there anything that we missed that would still be worth subscribing to the series?
Well, that's a multi-part question. I've only heard 3 other performances out of the preceding 5. That was VOCES8, and then the Academy of Ancient Music. I did not hear the I Fagiolini. I did not hear the Swingles. I got an earful of Gesualdo 6, And I only got an earful because I already have their CD of that program called Fading, and that is glorious. So I highly recommend the Gidwaldo Six. They're a fantastic group. I Fagiolini had been around for a while, but again, groups change in their personnel. I absolutely adore the Baroque program, the Academy of Ancient Music game. It was exhilarating. It was beautiful, beautiful playing, high energy Baroque music, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't. Um, Several concerti, one for a recorder that was astounding, a double cello concerto by Vivaldi, which was riveting and extremely well played. Um, Richard Egar was conducting from the harpsichord. We had a Brandenburg, I believe. Yes, Brandenburg 5, I think it was, or 2. Anyway, that's worth hearing. The advantage of getting a season ticket for this series is that you not only get to hear everything as it happens sequentially, but towards the end of the series, you get an extended period when you can hear all 10 at once for from, I think it's October 6th through the end of October. So you can purchase individual tickets by going to the website and just clicking on the picture of today's concert, and that will let you, or the concert you want to hear, and that will let you complete your sale. But I think that's a slightly high per concert price than buying the whole series. I bought the whole series when Chanticleer made me a deal I couldn't refuse. Chanticleer was selling the series in the U.S., and I'm a big fan of Chanticleer. I sign up for all their stuff. I've been to San Francisco for their galas. I'm just a huge fan. So I decided to give my business to Chanticleer. But now I think only through VOCES8 Foundation can you buy individual tickets. So yes, go back. If you like Baroque instrumental music, you will not want to miss the Academy of Ancient Music performance. If you liked VOCES8 today, you will certainly want to hear what VOCES8 did on August 1st. And the Swingles have been with us rather recently. I think it was only a year ago or 2 years ago we had the Swingles. I was sad to miss them, but I was taking a vacation from technology. I was in Tifton, Georgia. So I decided, nope, just not going to have any technology. But I will find it later because I have a subscription.
Wonderful. So we had a question. What can singers do with pitch that many instruments cannot?
Wow. Blake was answering one of these questions in the sort of the afterglow of the artist lounge because they got a question from someone who asked that question. If you're a violinist, you can adjust your pitch very quickly, and that's part of your job as a violinist is to adjust constantly the pitch because you don't have frets. You don't have, it's not like a key on the piano plunk. It's tuned to a certain pitch. You have to constantly be creating pitches by positioning your hand in the right place. And the tiniest little inflection of effort or pressure will change that pitch because you're changing the length of the string. Flute players, bassoonists, trumpet players, they've got instruments, and clarinetists, they've got instruments that are more precise in their pitch, but still the pitch can be influenced. It has to do with how mostly with your air and how much pressure you apply, but also how you attack the notes sometimes. The piano is fixed. The piano is tuned a certain way. And Blake made this clear when he gave his answer. Whereas on a piano is turned to what is called, a regular temperament, the well-tempered clavier. There's very specific intervals that most, that's not all, but most tunings use. But there is some real beauty in what is called the harmonic series. The harmonic series is a natural phenomenon whereby it starts with a low note, and then there are mathematical equivalencies that increase, that take the pitch up. They're very even, and that's how octaves and fifths and thirds and seconds and up this harmonic series. It's what whales do. It's what the spheres do. It's a basic principle of physics that if you increase these frequencies at a certain rate, they will go up in a certain way. When we have what we know as C major in the diatonic world, the world of Western music like us, when we're singing a hymn, all glory, laud, and honors, and B flat, and this great big final chord ends at a chord where we think is home. That's the tonic. It has a certain sound. Singers can take intervals that make up any chord and they can either stretch them or they can shrink them. And what they're doing when they're doing that is they're trying to appeal to excite some of the overtones to come out more in the sound. So I think Blake was talking about how they pull down 13ths, which is a big interval, and it's mostly used in jazz. And they pull in third. They stretch thirds, but they pull down sevenths. And of course, and if you don't know this nomenclature about music and pitch, it's a little hard to understand. Let's just say you're trying to you're fitting your feet. No, even better, you're fitting your fingers into a pair of gloves, all right? And there's these predetermined sizes for your gloves, but your fingers are all slightly different lengths. So sometimes you have to pull the glove in a little tighter, and sometimes you want to pull the glove out a little bit to be comfortable. And that's what singers do. They can do this gloriously. They can make something that sounds like just a plain basic chord. They can make a chord just shine and glow and open up because they've been able to get the relationships between the pitches, those intervals, to either contract or expand so that you get a real rush. And I know that Larry is on our call. Larry Pinson, hello Larry, is on our call today, and he's a singer. And I think Bill and Martha are both singers. Yes, and Greg, I saw Greg on earlier. I know he's a singer. So singer, and Amanda was a singer. Amanda studied music at Clayton State. She's featured on Clayton State's homepage right now because she's a member of the CSU Chorale, and they're rotating pitchers. So, she's among our singers. I love singing, but I've never really called myself a singer. But singers will appreciate this because in rehearsals, what you do, the conductor is constantly talking about pitch. What is the pitch? Get this pitch. This needs to be clearer. This needs to be cleaner. Second sopranos, you're not quite all together. And the children's choir, our children's choir does this too. So singers have this glorious ability to make things fit musically, orally, by adjusting pitch in clever ways that appeal to the natural principles of sound.
I think the glove analogy was just spot on and really explains, yeah, Larry likes that too. I think that really explains what singers do with their voices in a way that even non-singers can understand. I think that's very illuminating. Do singers have to train differently to sing a cappella rather than with instruments?
Oh, well, all singers have to be trained to listen. Listening is central to all of this. A cappella singing is a very particular type of singing because you have someone establishes a pitch for everybody, and depending on what period music you're singing, it could be an A440 pitch, it could be an A432 pitch, it could be an A, if you're in Vienna, it could be an A444 pitch. In other words, some singers have a very strong sense of absolute pitch, which is hard for them to adjust. But basically, a cappella, someone establishes a pitch, and everybody's got to agree to stay, true to that pitch while they're singing. And but the most important thing for the singers is that they have to listen. But the greatest challenge for singers is that they hear themselves, but at the same time, they can't always really hear themselves. It's because they've got this thing called their voice, and they've got these cavities, in these sinuses in their heads, and they've got, their ears and, what's going on here. And when they're producing sound, they can hear themselves, but they can't hear all of themselves. And that's why in opera, there is the role of the repetiteur and the vocal coach, because they give feedback to singers to say, all right, you're producing sound like this, and I'm hearing it like this. And I instead need to produce sound slightly differently so I can hear it like this. And it's like having your best friend tell you how you're doing while you're singing. It's having the vocal coach. So I think, Amanda, you started singing early, I'm sure, but then you entered the children's choir, you got some lessons there, and then you studied with Dr. Zeller and you got lessons there.
Yes.
So how were you taught to sing? When, you know, I mean, were you always working with instruments, or did you ever do any a cappella singing?
I did do a little bit of a cappella singing. I was in the university chorale as well. I would say the majority of the singing that I did was accompanied typically by piano or occasionally small orchestra. And it does change a little bit. You know, you get a lot of information when you're singing with an instrument. You get a lot of cues from the instrument and a lot of guidance on maintaining pitch from an instrument. And it definitely has its challenges, singing with another instrument and singing with another person is playing that instrument. So you definitely have to be able to communicate, and that's a challenge in and of itself. But I personally have always found a cappella singing to be much more difficult because of the level of concentration. It's very easy, you have nothing to guide you, so it's very easy to kind of let that pitch drip a little bit, and all of a sudden the entire song is flat and you don't even know, and you can't pull back onto pitch because you have nothing else as reference. So I personally always find a cappella singing much more difficult.
It's the beauty of Chanticleer, of VOCES8, of King Singers, of Stile Antico, you know, down the line, these professional ensembles, they have mammoth abilities to stay on pitch.
Mm-hmm.
They have a rock solid relationship with pitch, and they work at it. It's not, you know, it's not effortless. They have to rehearse to get things to stay put. Like the Penultimate piece we heard, that really challenged them. Huge intervallic leaps, you know, gigantic range, intervals that are very close together and intervals that are very far apart. Several lines going on at the same time, doing different things at different pitches. In other words, how do I listen to myself? How do I stay focused on what I need to do while at the same time responding with what's going on around me? And they have to cultivate that skill. But they do. They work very, very hard at that. So come time for performance, suddenly it just seems like it's natural.
I would imagine it's one of those things that if you practice more as an a cappella singer and as an a cappella group, it becomes not easier necessarily, but it comes more like second nature. And I would say the majority of singers are taught with an accompanist or a small ensemble. And so that kind of becomes their second nature to sing with other instruments kind of guiding them. And I just imagine it's one of those things that the more you practice, the easier it gets, and that it's possibly their preferred way of singing, you know, to sing a cappella as opposed to instruments, because it's what they're used to.
Mm-hmm. One of the very big challenges of a cappella singing is blend. You can't hide behind anything. You're fully exposed. And therefore, if you're going to have an ensemble of 8 voices, they have to be matched in a very particular way so that there is a harmonious and homogeneous blend of sound, but also that there's enough individuality in the sound so that when someone has a solo, it can sort of come out. It can come forward and sound like, you know, not just part of a blend, but emerging from the blend.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Shaw used to say, and I had the great privilege and pleasure of working with Mr. Shaw at the Atlanta Symphony and other places. And when I was doing artistic planning with him, and we would talk about soloists, he always, you know, he basically felt that soloists in the Verdi Requiem, soloists in Haydn's Creation, soloists in Walton's Belshazzar's piece, they needed to be singers that arose from the choir out of excellence. That was his view of a soloist. And therefore, you know, if you're going to be someone who has to blend in a small ensemble, you have to be there has to be a choice of who's going to sing to start with, but then you have to converge on the composite sound. And that's where so much of the work is done in these
when we lived in Toronto, I was a founding member of a Renaissance choral group called the Tallis Choir, not to be confused with the Tallis Scholars. We did largely a cappella music. it's very different kind of singing, but it's quite empowering because you are it, right? You produce, this group of singers produces everything. But you're right, you do have to listen. And all of us who founded this choir had prior experience singing a cappella music. Now, we rehearsed in the nave of the Trinity College Chapel, and we had no accompaniment. We learned the music, and that included Tallis and Ty and Taverner and Bird and all that stuff. Our conductor had a tuning fork that played A. And we used to make, do imitations of him. But anyway, and he'd give us our pitches, and that is how we read the music, not just how we sang it. That's how we learned it. So that was sort of, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, but choir practice was a workout.
Yes, I believe it. I mean, that's the old-fashioned way. You really earn everything doing it that way. The children's choir, and Amanda will remember this, there's ear training when you're singing, particularly in choral work, but ear training lets you identify pitch, recognize pitch, and learn to understand the relationships between the pitches and how to hear it and then sing it back and sort of internalize the pitches. It's something that, again, it enlarges the technique of any musician to be able to have very accurate sense of pitch recognition. So that really helps a cappella singing.
Absolutely. And then in college, as a music major, you get 4 semesters of ear training class. And I'll tell you, as somebody who's not typically an a cappella singer, that was the most difficult 2 years of my life. It's very, very difficult to go from being, supported or in a choir with instrumentation to being on your own and being kind of retaught how to start from the very beginning and hear the difference between, a minor second and a minor third. It's all just it's very nitty gritty and very complicated. And that was not the best time for me.
Yeah. And here's something too, and we should get on to another topic, but again, on the piano, you've only got 88 keys, and they're all to a single pitch. In, let's say you're playing a piece in A major, which is 3 sharps, and C sharp is one of them. Well, there's something called C sharp, and there's another name for that, and that's D flat. Those on the piano are the same pitch. Those in singing are often not the same pitch, because they're suggesting a different relationship to the key. So the C sharp is the 3rd pitch in the regular scale of that key. But if the notation is for a D flat, that references a different harmonic moment, and therefore singers can sing a D flat rather than a C sharp. A piano cannot. And that's really subtle, but that's where the 20th and 21st centuries have given singers a wealth of opportunity to sing in ways that instruments cannot.
Are there any more questions from our live Zoom group here? Oh, looks like we have a question from Mr. Bowden.
Not so much a question, but Sam, I cheated and I looked it up. VOCES8 formed in 2005.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And I think they were a little controversial at first because their programming was, shall we say, unusual. Mm-hmm. But we really love them. In 2019, they released this disc. They talked about overtones. I think it was, in their session. This is called Enchanted Isle, and it's Celtic music, although it includes some American tunes and modern tunes. But the conversation about overtones in this disc, you can really hear that, even though it's a CD. You can. They're really working on that. I find it very emotional music to hear. So it would be great to see them at Spivey Hall, but that's a different story, I guess, for another time.
I mean, I'm sure that these singers know of Spivey Hall, simply because that world is so interconnected. and you know, there's former King singers, there's former Chanticleer members, there's former, you know, members of you know, Tallis scholars. There's a lot of people out there who know about Spivey Hall, and like Robert Shaw would say, Spivey Hall's to music what light is to painting. So you know, that's and our hall is so spectacularly good for this sort of singing. So yeah, we'll have more of it. That's for sure. Larry, please. Yeah.
I just want to make one comment about VOCES8. I was introduced to that group in February of this year. Had never heard of them before, and the two pieces that I was introduced them by was by William Byrd. It's a Latin title called "God Don't Be Angry with Me," and the other one was a piece by Bach. And both of them very Baroque, wonderfully done. Both pieces were, and I've been sort of in love with that group ever since. And I listen to them every chance I get. So yeah, bring them to Spivey if we can get them.
Oh, it's not a question of can we get them. It's just a question, can they ever get in the country? Yes. And will there be enough people who are, you know, willing to present them such that they can justify spending, you know, 2 or 3 weeks of their life coming and all get visas and apply for the visa and be treated like criminals by the United States to collect their visa and all those other things. So it's touring America has been made difficult, not just by the pandemic, but by the United States of America. But if there's people like Spivey Hall that will make an early commitment to what is called an anchor date, saying, I will present you come what may. And I do that with a lot of singers and quite a few European ensembles. Then they either build the tour backwards from that date or they build the tour forward from that date. And with any luck, there's a critical mass and the ensembles show up. Bill has another observation.
Larry, that Bird piece, and Escara Domina, that's been one of my favorites for years. That's the Zion Deserta Est. Yes. And if you want to hear a heartbreaking piece of music, you can get it online in a cinch. And it's the second half of that motet. It's just heartbreaking.
Civitas Sancti.
Yeah.
Is the second part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is exactly the one that I was referring to. And I think it's just wonderful. They do it more wonderfully than anybody else I've ever heard it done by.
Yeah, their recording is superb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions or comments? Sam, I have to ask, are we going to be doing any more post-concert talks for this Live from London series?
Oh, absolutely, assuming that we can get people together to do them, because people's lives are busy. But yeah, we'd like to do the next, you know, the final 4, if you will. And the next one is, and these are consecutive Saturdays. You don't have to say, is this a Saturday on or off? We're doing the next 4 Saturdays after this. And next Saturday is with Apollo 5. And their program is Where All Roses Go. That's the title of it. And I just quickly scanned it, and I gleaned that it is love in all of its manifestations. Josquin Dupré, Eric Whittaker, William Byrd, and Michael McLinn of, you know, some very recent Celtic music, Joy and Wonder. So this is another program with a theme, but love is going to find its way into many, 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 many songs. So I'm sure they have a beautiful freedom to compose a beautiful program. This is a group of 5 singers, 2 women, 3 men. I do not know them, but that's the joy of discovery. You know, if they're on the series, I don't think they're going to be, I don't think they're going to be worried about quality with the series. I think they've really been able to assemble first-rate singers. And again, what you can do things with 5 singers that you wouldn't do with 8 singers, you wouldn't do with 12 singers. So the scaling of it will afford different opportunities for different pieces to be performed in the series. Does anybody know them? Does anybody here know Apollo 5? I don't. It sounds
Yes. I've heard them on one piece on YouTube.
Oh, good.
If you look them up there, you can get one or two of their pieces on YouTube.
Have favorable impression, Larry?
I'm sorry?
Good. Yeah.
Did you not, what you heard on they were very good, but not quite as good as VOCES8.
Okay.
That's one man's opinion.
We'll see how they do. Well, understood. And we'll see how they do. And yeah, so we may adjust the start time of our Zoom session. We might start a little earlier, simply because it's a little easier to roll off the performance and talk about the performance while the performance is still sort of really. Oh, I'm cutting in and out, unfortunately. I have an unstable internet connection today because of the machine I have to use. But am I back now?
Yeah, maybe, did we lose Sam? Maybe try turning your video off and see if it's a little bit better.
I'm not sure Sam can hear us. Oh, it looks like he did turn his video off. Okay. And Sam, you're muted right now. If you could unmute your microphone.
My system crashed, and I'm back just to say that we'll be back next week. And we might start a little earlier next week so we can start into our Zoom chat with less, with enough of it, but quickly enough so that we can actually.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. This was very good. I got a great deal out of your presentation on singing voices. And I concur 100% with Amanda, even though I didn't start as early as she did. I didn't start singing until I was 62. And it's really hard to teach an old dog new tricks, you know. But I certainly have had my life enriched enormously by doing it. And I'm not a bit sorry that I've tried it.
You have traveled and sung in ensembles, have you not, Larry?
I'm sorry, traveled where?
Didn't you travel overseas with the vocal ensemble?
Yes, I did. I have had a wonderful opportunity, and I sang morning service in St. George's Chapel inside Windsor Castle. That was one of my great treats in being a member of the choir. We also did a week-long services at Bristol Cathedral. So the week in Bristol and the, of course, we did the normal kind of pilgrimages. You know, we went to Canterbury and to Winchester and several other places like that in the process. But I actually sang in Bristol and sang in St. George's Chapel. And be honest with you, they're two high points in my singing career.
Fantastic. Well, we shall leave it on high points. And thank you so much, Amanda and Tammy and everyone else. Lovely to see your faces. Lovely to have a chat with you. And I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. And we will see you again next week for the rest of the series.
Thank you.
That sounds great. I'll be sending an email out probably Wednesday, but we'll use the same link that you used today to join all the remainder of the Zooms. Make it kind of easy for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Much. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye,
Thanks. Happy Labor Weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.